Hello, friends! Welcome to my library. Today we are talking about some really freaking good books. So, let's go. Okay, hi, hello, welcome. It's me, Maile, and I'm in my office today. So, I have officially hit my book goal for the year. It is the beginning of October and I am living my best life. I've read 40 books this year. That was my soft goal. My stretch goal is 50 and I think I'll easily get to it. I may get to even more than 50 this year. We'll see. But I haven't done a book video in a long time, so I thought I need to talk about the books that I've read lately because I have read some really freaking good books, and a lot of them are super trendy right now. Some are definitely worth the hype and you should pick up and read. Some I would say you could skip, but for the most part I have some really highly recommended books to share with you today. But before we dive right in, I want to remind you to subscribe to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. You guys just click that red button. It takes 0.5 seconds and we'll move on with the video. All right, did you click it? Good, let's go. So let me get my Goodreads pulled up, okay? So that I can remember what I've read. I will say I did reread / listen to for the first time all of the Harry Potter audiobooks. I'll link a video up here where I talked about that in depth if you want to go check that out. So I'm not going to talk about the Harry Potter books. So I'll start with what I read after the Harry Potter books. So already this is going to be a freaking controversial opinion. Okay, the first book I'm going to talk about is the book Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is the only Colleen Hoover book that I've read. So I read Verity, as did every single other person on the internet, and I read Verity in one day, okay? It was the kind of book that you could not put down. It was a very compelling mystery thriller. You weren't sure what was gonna happen. You weren't sure who you were supposed to root for. Apparently, in true Colleen Hoover fashion, there's a big twist at the end. And I really liked the book a lot until I got to the end. And without spoiling it or ruining it, the twist was just so far-fetched to me. It was very far-fetched. And I just found myself kind of rolling my eyes like, of course, this is the twist at the end. Like, oh my gosh. So it just felt a little like, I need to put an unbelievable twist here, so this is my unbelievable twist. It didn't really feel story-serving as much as it felt kind of pandery to the audience, like wanting a twist. And like I said, I've never read any other of her books, and reading this book, I don't think I want to read any of her other books. I don't know, change my mind down below if you're a big fan of her, but I really enjoyed the experience of reading it up until the twist, and the twist made me kind of hate the whole book. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Okay, the next book I read was another very popular TikTok book, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, this book is one of the best books I've read of this year so far. I loved this book. It is so layered. The characters are so dynamic. It was a fascinating story to read, and I found myself thinking that it was a real life biography. So basically the premise of the book is it's the life and times of one of the most famous movie starlets of the 1950s onward, Evelyn Hugo, telling her story at the end of her life to a young journalist who she's mysteriously connected to somehow, and that's like the B-plot thread of the entire book. So you learn all about Evelyn growing up in the film industry and becoming an actress in Hollywood, and you go through all the different decades of Hollywood, and the narrative is framed by each of her husbands. She ends up marrying 7 men, but the real love of her life isn't any of the 7, and she's finally revealing her true self and talking about the love of her life, and unraveling the mystery and the intrigue of who Evelyn Hugo is. And man, it was fascinating. Completely made up, like not based on a real person. I think it's supposed to be maybe loosely inspired by Elizabeth Taylor. It's kind of heartbreaking, but in a very subtle way, and wow, it's just definitely 10 out of 10 worth the read. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I think everyone should read it. It led me to read more Taylor Jenkins Reid books, which I will talk about in a second. Another one of hers basically ties this one for first because I love that one so much too, but I definitely recommend that you check out Taylor Jenkins Reid books. If you like a little bit of intrigue, if you like kind of biography history but narrative, if you like a good romance, she is such a fabulous writer. I loved this book. Okay, next up is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I think that's how you say her last name. I don't know, correct me down below. And this book was super popular in like 2012, 2013, I think, maybe 2015. You know, the movie came out with Emilia Clarke, and this was super popular back in the day. And I definitely saw the movie and don't remember it being super good, but I liked the story. And I don't know what compelled me to read this. Something did, though. I don't know, can't remember. It was too long ago. But I picked this book up and I read it, and I liked it. Don't get me wrong. It's a very, very interesting story. It's basically a love story about a quadriplegic man who's kind of given up on life and is extremely depressed and ultimately wants to end his life in doctor-assisted suicide. Because there's no hope for his recovery. His parents make him promise to give them 6 months to change his mind, and his parents hire a caretaker to not do anything medical for him, but just to hang out with him and be his companion. And it happens to be this beautiful, very joyful, positive, bubbly woman who is just a very fun character to read. And they have a very unlikely romance, and she kind of helps him through his end of life. And it's sad, but it's heartwarming, heartfelt. I did really like it. It was not my favorite book I've ever read. I've only read one other book by Jojo Moyes called The Peacock Emporium, and I liked that one better. I think I maybe gave that one 4 out of 5 stars. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars, and not really because of anything other than it was good but not great, in my opinion. So, worth reading maybe if you like that kind of stuff, but it's not the best book I've read so far this year. Okay, but speaking of my most favorite book I've read, this is the one that is tied for my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book. The next book is Daisy Jones and the Six. Oh my gosh. This book is unlike any book that I've ever read before. From start to finish, I could not put this book down. I think I read it in one day. It basically follows a band in the 1970s called The Six. That starts out, you learn all about the bandmates and this up-and-coming musician named Daisy Jones who meshes well with the band and joins the band, and you just follow the band throughout their career and the struggle of making albums and touring and complicated relationships and affairs, and it's all told like a memoir, like a sit-down interview of each of the band members. And so it's really fun to hear different parts of their journey be told in different perspectives. It's a nice commentary on truth is different for everyone, and one person's truth could be completely different from the next person's truth. So, you know, 2 people that were in the exact same band and went through the exact same years of career would tell one story that they both were present for completely different ways. And the dynamics of their relationship in the band, how they were ever changing and evolving, how some of them fell in love, some of them hated each other but then grew to love each other, and some of them were insanely jealous of other ones. Some of them had fantastic career moments, and some of them kind of plateaued. And man, it is all told from their perspective after they've broken up and been apart for 20 years. And it's a reflection, really. It's a reflection of their story and their time in the band together. And man, is it so good. Now, this book has a lot of conflicting reviews. I've seen people who absolutely adore it and think it's like a piece of art, like I do. Like, that's my opinion. I think it is like nothing I've ever read before and a piece of art in literature. And there are some people who are like, I don't freaking get this. What? I don't understand. This is so weird and I don't like it, and no. So I can't tell you if you'll like it or not, but this was one of the best books that I've read in this whole year. Maybe the best book I've read in this whole year. And it's another one by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Okay, next up. I've read a lot of trendy books this year, you know? I guess there's a reason they're trendy. And speaking of trendy, this author has been so trendy, I think specifically on TikTok this year. I read all of the books by this author, but the first one I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. It is so stinking good. It's not my favorite of hers. It's barely inched out by another one I'll talk about in a second, but this one is so good. I gave it 5 out of 5. stars on Goodreads. It is a classic romance. All of her books are just fun, upbeat, conflict plays out, but it's all wrapped up in a beautiful happy ending, mushy gushy romance, like just all the fun, light-hearted, quick and easy, simple reads that just make you happy. Just make you happy to have a nice escape, you know? This one specifically is about a literary agent who's super career focused and minded and has a little sister who she just thinks hung the moon and would do anything for. They go on a summer vacation to a quaint little town, and it happens to be the town where her literary agent rival is. You just see them slowly develop from the hate to the love relationship. Man, it is so good. Ugh, I love it. So lighthearted, so fun. Definitely worth the read if you like romance. This will be like one of your fave romances ever. Okay, next book I read was Malibu Rising, which is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really, really loved this one. So all of her books are connected in sort of a loose metaverse. So this is actually has a character in it from Evelyn Hugo. It's about 4 famous siblings who throw like the biggest party of the summer every year. It's set in the 1980s. You just learn about each of the 4 siblings and their dynamic and how their abandonment by their father is peppered throughout their relationship and their self-identity. And man, it's just a very complex, very nuanced story. Lots of good character development and lots of character variety. All the 4 siblings are completely different, but you love them all for different reasons. And it just delves into their family structure and their life. I love a good family plot. It's got some great romance in it too, and a little bit of intrigue. It's a really, really good read. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid that I gave 5 out of 5 stars because she is an incredible author. Okay, next, I actually listened to this. My dad and I drove to New York this last time I went to New York, and we listened to a couple of books, but the first was Green Lights, which is Matthew McConaughey's memoir. And you have to listen to the audiobook of this because Matthew McConaughey narrates it, and I can't even imagine reading the book in my own voice now that I've listened to him read the book. He has some of the most wild and crazy stories that I've ever heard. He has such a unique outlook on life, so many incredible life lessons. I mean, that man has lived 5 lives over and has just a very wise and humble outlook. It's just a book that honestly really makes you think and reflect on life and want to be better and do better and strive for more. You know, you would think that a Matthew McConaughey memoir is just a funny, flippant celebrity book, but it is not that. Just trust me, you need to listen to him read this book. That's another one that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I told you guys, I've read a lot of really good books in this last quarter. Okay, next, speaking of celebrity books, I also read the book that everyone has read the past couple of months. I read Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, and whoa. Oh my gosh, trigger warning right now. It talks so in depth about anxiety, depression, eating disorder, weight restriction, I mean, counting calories. It was a lot to read, honestly. Her story of abuse at the hands of her mom and her life growing up is just such a commentary on how life is so different from the outside looking in, and how you cannot assume that just because it seems like someone is living their dream, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, or that their life is a good, happy, well-balanced, healthy life. I admire her so incredibly much for overcoming it, rising above it, and also being able to be in a healthy enough place to reflect on it all and put it all down on a page. I'm sure that was probably very cathartic for her to be able to get it all out and write her story down. I mean, there were parts where I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrific. I don't want to be reading this. But I think it's an important book to read, an incredibly important book to read. And I commend her for writing it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, not because it is not a 5-star book, but because it's tough to read at some points because it's so raw and so real. So just know that going in. I think it's definitely worth the read, unless topics like parental abuse or eating disorders specifically are triggering or sensitive to you. Don't read this book because it's a lot. And oh, it's a lot. But it's very, very good. Okay, moving on. I read another Emily Henry book, Beach Read, which this one I think inches its way out as my favorite. I loved this book. It's basically, I hate to say it. I hate to say it because it sounds like I'm diminishing her writing or her style or her books, but I'm not. This is not a diminishing comment, it's just a truthful comment. It's kind of plug and play. Like, it follows the same structure pretty much as the rest of her 2 books, but she writes such fun characters and such interesting stories that you don't mind. Like, I liked her book. Why wouldn't I want to read another book that's similar to it but has different new characters to fall in love with and new fun plot elements, you know? So it's not a bad thing that they're very similar, but I thought I'd point that out just in case you don't like that. I don't mind it at all. This one is about 2 authors who randomly find themselves in the same town under very different circumstances, and both of them have kind of had a secret thing for each other since college. They both thought the other wouldn't give them the time of day and didn't even know who they were anymore. They're grown up now, and they're both writers, but very different kinds of writers. Essentially challenge each other to write the other's genre of a book. So through this process, they of course, you know, fall in love, and man, it's just so good. The characters in this book are amazing. They're just snarky and kind of pessimistic and sarcastic, but really very sensitive deep down and going through a lot, and lots of real life happening in this book. And I love all her books, but this one is my favorite. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, and then the last book I'm going to talk about today is the last Emily Henry book that I read, People We Meet on Vacation, which is about 2 best friends who go on vacation every single year together and are kind of secretly in love, never act on those feelings whatsoever, go on one last big hoopla vacation to kind of repair a tear in their friendship that happened a few years prior, and they end up confessing their love for each other. This one is a little bit more of a slow burn, which I don't like. And I also am not the biggest fan of the friends to lovers trope, just because I don't love the idea of, oh, I don't want to ruin our friendship, being a compelling enough reason to not put yourself out there and, you know, be with the love of your life. Like, that just seems dumb to me. I don't want to read back and forth conflict about that. But there's not that much of that in this book, actually, which I really liked, because I was skeptical about liking this one as much as I liked her other 2 because of the friends to lovers trope, which I just know I'm not a big fan of. But I was pleasantly surprised. It did take a long time to get there, but once we got there, it was great. I mean, it was so great. So this one is definitely super good too. I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars just because it's not as amazing, incredible, over the top as her other 2, in my opinion, but for sure definitely worth the read and a really great companion piece to her other 2 books. So those are some of the books that I've read so far in this quarter of the year to finish out my reading goal. And I loved that I've tried a lot of really trendy books, and most of them have really surprised me and held up and been super true to all the hype. So let me know down below if you've read any of them and what you think. And I would love any book suggestions down below for what I should read next. Definitely like this video if you want more book content. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye!